First of all, if you're grateful for the Boettcher Foundation, make some noise, guys. Come on. Right? I mean, what a gift. To this day, the Boettcher Scholarship is the single greatest gift that I personally have ever received in my life, other than the gift of this ugly mug that I got from my parents, but that's a close second place. Now, I'm told that there are some kids out there whose parents can simply cut them a check for the $94,000 a year. Yes, that's what it actually costs this year to attend my alma mater, Colorado College. Now, I would say that that's roughly the cost of a house, but we all know you ain't getting a house in Colorado for under $400K these days, right? My parents didn't have that kind of money. I don't know about you, so that wasn't going to happen for me. Now, I say that because the Boettcher Foundation sure knows how to turn a humble story into a good story, don't they? And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about gratitude and good stories. I'm going to start with a brief note on being grateful. Then I'm going to tell you my unusual rule for making life decisions. And then I'm going to say how we can all be leaders through the stories that we live. And I'm going to end with a secret bonus challenge. Fortunately, as we know, this group has no problem rising to challenges, right? All right. So let's kick things off with #gratitude. We all need to be more grateful. And while I don't disagree that gratitude is important, I'm going to put it to you that it's not really enough. And here's why. Let's flip it. What's the opposite of being grateful? Being ungrateful. Somewhere out there, there's a kid whose parents did cut them a check for $94,000 this year, #NBD, and they don't even appreciate the enormity of the gift that they've been given, the proverbial spoiled brat, as it were, right? I think we can all agree that that's not a particularly great story, but is being grateful a good story? Let me ask you this. Let's say you go to the next Pixar film, bucket of popcorn in hand, and a character shows up on the screen and says, "I'm grateful." The end. And that's the end of the movie. My guess is if it were a real movie, you'd probably be thinking something like, now what? And that's just it. Now what is the key to turning gratitude into a good story. And to me, now what sounds an awful lot like there's a choice to be made somewhere. So I'm going to share with you my answer to the question of now what, and my unusual rule for making big and small life decisions. And I'm also going to point out that I am a terrible Boettcher Scholar, and you're going to find out exactly why in just a second. So, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to assume that half of the audience here is either currently a senator, about to be a senator, or co-president of the Junior Senators Club in your college. And when I tell you my life story, you'll understand why I'd never be a good fit for politics or anything of substance, really, but I digress. So as I've always understood it, the Boettcher Foundation has 3 core pillars: leadership, service, and of course, making Colorado specifically a better place and more impactful place by retaining top minds. That's all of you. So like any good Boettcher Scholar, the day that I graduated from Colorado College, I was on a plane to Europe where I lived for almost a decade. Whoops. Uh-oh. So, why did this bright stripling, who at least at one point had potential, choose to do something so seemingly random and arbitrary? Well, for one thing, the Boettcher Foundation allowed me to live, experiment, and explore in ways that I never would have been able to without the scholarship. That's a fact. And they afforded me the incredible privilege, almost certainly unintentionally, of being able to look at some of my big life decisions from a bird's eye view. And for that, I am eternally grateful. So, whenever faced with a big decision, I didn't know the answer, I just said, what would make a good story? And that's what I did, okay? So, I don't say any of what follows to brag, because I have no doubt that you're all more intelligent, impactful, and incredible human beings than I am. But since I was given this platform, again, in error, I can only assume I'm going to fill up my time with some hardcore bloviating, because I'm fascinated by 2 things. 1, the story that is our lives. Whether we realize it or not, we're building that story day by day, action by action, and choice by choice. And 2, decision trees. How many of you have seen this 1998 romantic comedy? Anybody? That's honestly more than I thought. So in this movie, in one reality, a British Gwyneth Paltrow gets on a train. And in another reality, a British Gwyneth Paltrow, she's not British, by the way, she doesn't get on a train. And her life and her hairstyle are very different depending on the outcome of that seemingly random binary, sliding doors. In your life, maybe in one reality, you stay next to your parents in Arvada, and in another reality, you go take that job on a farm in rural Australia, sliding doors. See, I've been fascinated with the big decisions that shape our lives since before I was awarded my scholarship over 20 years ago. I know I don't look a day over 50. In fact, I even made this short film about it my junior year in high school, and it hasn't aged a bit. Mwah. Amazing. See, I've always believed, I'm a weirdo, that on my deathbed I might take some comfort in looking back over the silly stories I accrued, and that might make me feel just a little bit better about letting go of my brief time on this pale blue dot that we call home. Some years later, I discovered Bronnie Ware's book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And in her book, the #1 regret listed is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. I don't know about you, but to me that sounds an awful lot like I wish I'd made some different choices, right? So how do we make different choices if we don't have a system in place for making those types of choices? So my system for my unusual self has always been, what would make a good story, okay? And where did that get me, you might ask? All right, settle down, okay? It's a speech. I'm getting there. There's a beginning and a middle and an end. You're so impatient. I know it's almost lunchtime, but my God. Okay. My sophomore year in college, I saved up enough money selling cell phones to buy a one-way plane ticket to Australia. I didn't have any money in my bank account, so I had to work illegally washing dishes in an Indian restaurant in Perth until I could buy another one-way plane ticket to Peru, where I spent the rest of that summer. That is very stupid, but it's a pretty good story. My sophomore year, I decided to study abroad in Maastricht, the Netherlands, after seeing exactly one pamphlet of the city. I knew nothing about the language, the country, or the culture before I went to move there. Again, that's pretty dumb, but it's a pretty good story. While I was there, I met a Dutch girl. Oh, so sweet. So I just didn't come home on my return flight. Still had $0 in the old bank account, so I had to live that summer in a hobbit cave with a leaky roof and no refrigerator off of dried lentils and dried macaroni donated to me by the other smarter students. Now that is either incredibly romantic or incredibly idiotic. I will let you decide, but I have been told that's a good story. When I moved to the Netherlands, the first job I could get was teaching English at a prestigious institute known lovingly as the Nuns, because historically, all of the teachers were, in fact, nuns. So as you can see, I fit right in. There, I got to teach high-level business English and presentations to some remarkable European executives and business elites and hear phenomenal stories for 5 years. But on the side, I was writing pop songs, like this one for the Japanese Madonna, I guess. I don't know how that happened either, but apparently it did. I still can't get over it. But I parlayed that into forming a DJ duo wearing pink and purple cat masks. No, I couldn't see out of that. Yes, it was hot as hell. And we toured around not only the Netherlands, but also mainland China for a while. That's a pretty good story. After years of struggle, I was finally fluent in the language of Dutch. I got a job working at one of the top record labels in Amsterdam, and me and my now Dutch wife, we had an amazing life, okay? So what did we do? The only logical thing to do. We got rid of all of our possessions, and we moved to Los Angeles with nothing more than 2 suitcases and 2 cats as carry-on. And I swear that that is true. And look at the result. Oh, it's so sweet. You see, in my life, I've been a salesman, an English teacher, a business coach, a DJ, a moderately famous streamer on the Chinese version of Twitch, a web developer, a writer. I've been a podcast host, and for the last 9 years, I've been the owner of a digital marketing agency that helps mission-driven organizations tell their story in the digital world. Because at some point, I recognized that a lot of brilliant people have great difficulty telling and building their stories. So for better or for worse, I never asked myself what would make the most money. I never asked myself what would advance my career. I certainly never asked myself what would be the safest choice. I just said, well, make a good story. And that's what I did. And for much of my life, that was enough. But as I got older, I started to rethink my own maxim, because a good person and a good pie aren't quite the same thing, even though maybe ChatGPT disagrees. Let me explain. Good has two meanings, right? There's interesting good, and then there's gives you faith in humanity good. Like when the Boettcher Foundation changed the story of my life with that famous white envelope all those years ago. Now, these days, I'm more interested in what makes a faith in humanity good story of my life, of your life, of my clients' businesses. And I've been very fortunate that I've talked to, worked with, and interviewed hundreds of executives, entrepreneurs, and founders. And it sure seems like we all have some very tough choices to make. Choices about what comes next in our life. Choices about how safe or how original we can be in any given moment. I think it is my mission in this world to show people that whenever it appears that there's only two choices, there's always a third, utterly ridiculous and potentially wildly inappropriate other choice that they're just not considering. As Jay Pritchett from the hit show Modern Family said, when everyone zigs, zoink. Another beauty. I mean, we're not there yet, folks. We're getting closer. So, our good friend Ralph Waldo Emerson once said that fear defeats more people than any other one thing in the world. And I didn't actually want to quote Ralph Waldo Emerson here. I only did this for one point, and that is that how many other essayists are there named Ralph Emerson, okay? Like, do we really need to say Waldo every time? I mean, why is every high school valedictorian for the last 50 years quoted this? I think, just Ralph is fine. Ralph Emerson, we all know who we're talking about, okay? So, it's obvious, isn't it? If you do what I did, you're going to have some great stories. You're going to have a tremendous love of humanity, a global consciousness, and quite possibly a broad array of tools for creative problem solving. But if you stay in the proverbial Omaha, which in our case might be more like Aurora, my hometown, a town represent, you could just become Warren Buffett. So see, folks, it pays to stay right here in Colorado. How did I do, Boettcher? Well, that's fair. So there's no such thing as a right choice in this game. Every choice has merits and drawbacks. The only choice that matters is the one that you feel is going to make a good story of your life. Because a good story is not necessarily a crazy story or a silly story or a stupid story. A good story can be as simple as volunteering at a soup kitchen when everybody else is out partying on New Year's Eve. Or in business, it can be donating 1% of your profits to charity, solving an intractable problem, embracing the circular economy, or just fighting for incremental change within your organization. But those of you who have dedicated your lives to building good stories, and ChatGPT swing and a miss. It's close, though. It's close. We're almost there. You know that you can't expect people to throw you a parade for bringing good stories into this world. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius said nearly 2,000 years ago, it is entirely possible to be a good person without anyone realizing it. Womp womp. Because on this path, your rewards have to be inner, and as we discussed, your only judge is ultimately yourself. So, I'm not suggesting that you or anyone you know should do what I did, because that would be malpractice. But I do hope that I can at least encourage you to think slightly more outside the box and to veer maybe just a little more off the well-worn path and to channel your gratitude into something just a little more profound or at least more interesting than a mere leg up on the competition. Now, I am humbled by all the brilliance and the selflessness in this room, by the commitment to leadership, community, and to making this great state better, which I so selfishly abandoned all those years ago. And most of all, I want you to know that your stories matter, maybe more than you realize. And if you like the story of your life, hey, keep on trucking. You're doing great. You do you. But if you don't like the story of your life so far, you can change it. It's not too late, because you're still building that story day by day, action by action, and choice by choice. So what does the story of your life look like, such that on your deathbed, you can honestly say, I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life that others expected of me. Unless, of course, you are under the age of 21. In which case, you will not die. You will live forever as a human cyborg in perpetual servitude to Mark Zuckerberg. Now, every Boettcher Scholar in this room has been given a profound and deeply powerful gift. And I put it to you that we all need to move beyond gratitude and our acceptance of that gift. So my challenge to you today is, when faced with the next big decision of your life, consider asking what would make a good story. Or better yet, what would make a good story? So I'd like to end with a quote from Auschwitz survivor Dr. Edith Eger's aptly titled book, The Choice. We can't choose to vanish the dark, but we can choose to kindle the light. So I'm going to ask you one more time, if maybe now you're feeling just a little more grateful for what the Boettcher Foundation has allowed you to do with the story of your life, please make some noise. And one more thing, if 20 years from now, Floyd Pierce asks you to give a speech to other Boettcher Scholars, by God, you better get on that train. Thank you.